We'll talk about fountain pens. A friend of mine, her our friend Ron, who's a great writer. He's a cryptologist, really great guy. Respect him a lot. I've listened to some of his podcasts, done a lot of work in the field that he's done is great, and wanted to send a shout out to him. He liked this pen of mine, and I says, "Well, yeah, I got hooked on fountain pens. Not really fountain pens. Got hooked on calligraphy, I should say, dip pens, and I was never really exposed to fountain pens. I was always more into the gel pens, the art pens, and I was like, this thing is like a dip pen, but doesn't have the flexibility. So I really avoided them for a long, long time until one just happened to fall into my lap, and one becomes many. They're like potato chips. This is a nice pen. It's a very wet pen. That's the thing you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be dealing with different filling systems. You're going to be dealing with different nibs, different feeds. Do you have a plastic feed? Do you have an ebonite feed? Do you have a gold nib, a steel nib? Is it a piston filler? Is it a cartridge filler, cartridge converter, or is it like an eyedropper? Okay, this is a piston filler, and I'll group these basically on that. I'll show you what all I got here real quick. So that's a piston filler, and it works very well. It's very wet. It's probably because of the ink in it. So what else do I have? It's a piston filler. Okay, this is a piston filler. This is a Noodler's Conrad in acrylic. It has their flex nib. It's an ink window here, ebonite feed, and that Noodler's pen nib simile. So, like, when this friction fit, this is a nib that's a nib unit. In other words, it screws in. This one, you have to actually take the whole thing out. And this is it in vegetable resin, which probably closely one of the best resins you'll ever get. It's biodegradable, and it doesn't do any impact on the environment, really. What's nice about it too is that it lasts a lot longer and is more durable than all these other finishes. This is probably my best writing pen. I prefer an extra fine or fine. This writes like a medium. Now I can just buy another nib for it and solve that. This is one of the best writing pens. It doesn't burp. Burping is where when you're writing, you get a lot of ink that just comes out by the capillary action. It doesn't have also that much of a problem with nib creep, where you get the ink that rides up the nib. So those are the piston fillers. Now I want to talk about um, some pocket pens here, real quick. Pocket pens, you have a couple of them. This is a cheap little Pilot Petite eyedropper. You take this apart, you eyedropper the ink into where you want it, you close it with silicone grease. There's no piston, there's no converter, there's no nothing. It's very simple. This one's the same way. This is a Wankai Mini. Love these pens. There's a lot of things I don't love about them. One of the main things I don't love about them is that the caps. Good thing about this, it's a good pen. It's not going to have the cap come apart in your pocket. Um, but there's no clip, so it's just going to be bouncing around. This is a Coeco All Sport in aluminum. It has a clip, but the clip moves. Okay, so there's so many times you'd be wearing it, have it on you, and the pen just is the cap, and the pen's in your pocket. Those screw on. That's one of the main caveats. This pops off. Quicker access, and then you get into things like this, which is a pocket pen. The Traveler's fountain pen, solid brass, good clip, and it has a very solid snap to it. And this goes on there. Benefit of a snapping pen. So this literally is probably the best ones. Out of all these, this is the best writer. This is an extra fine, nice writer, but can run dry. These two here are probably the best. Cheapest pen, very expensive pen. Now we'll get into like other ones. This is a Noodler's uh, Ahab, just like the other one here, but it's not a piston. It's a converter. I have a little. It comes with a piston that's built into it, but I have it almost like an eyedropper. You can eyedropper this. You can fill this whole thing with ink. Really great pen, but it's very big, very bulky. Again, vegetable resin. The shape of the whale here. You can see. That one screws on. Getting into the Visconti. Very expensive pen. It's a Van Gogh. Sunflowers. Nice snap. Magnetic. I like that. Clip is worth it. It's a cartridge converter with a little piston inside. That's nice. It's got a nib unit. Very nice nib. Very bouncy. One of my better pens. Very wet though. A little too wet sometimes for me. Get what you pay for. But this is definitely one of my top three. And then you get to these two here. These are Conklins. This is in leather. They're both the same. They're both Conklin Duragraphs. This is the one Raylan Nelson kind of got for me. Willie Nelson's granddaughter. Great person. Very thankful for that. And this one I kind of treasure. This one is in my top list because it's a good writer. Reminds me of her. I have a real nice orange ink in it. Diamine Ancient Copper. That's the other thing you got to think about with inks. You know, when you have inks, are you going to have an ink that is a permanent ink, or is it going to be a very wet flowing ink that's not going to be permanent? I prefer a permanent ink, but there's some caveats to that. One being that the ink that you're using, well, these are permanent inks. There's Air Force, and there's Purple Heart. Permanent inks, you know, but they're going to be a harder ink to deal with in a pen. I'll show you a nib unit. Hong Leon nib unit. Shows you how it screws into the pen. They're in a pen, you know, that just screws right in. Right out to about there, you can swap them real easily. Whereas if it's a ebonite one, you're going to have to friction fit that. A lot of times it's not going to be easy. But, yeah, those are some really nice pens. Not all of my collection, just some of the ones I have on hand I've been using. What are my top ones? Okay. I'm going to say probably this one and this one are two of my top ones. This one's definitely this one as far as her use. This is the best writer. So these five here are like the best. Best design, probably the Visconti. One's just fun to carry around, right with the acrylic, probably the Wankai Mini.